Mm.
Right, now it's recorded. So, hello and welcome to From Blank Page to Big Screen. It's like I said before recording, it's going to be a bit different. There's no PowerPoint, there's no materials that's going to be sent out. It's just me, this recording, and who have attended now and who will be attending later on. Essentially, it's going to be an mutual talk, so feel free to ask questions about your own scripts. Jack is just fresh into screenwriting.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's been where most of you are now. Some of you might be freshly new to the industry. Some of you might be runners or production assistants wanting to get your scripts read. Jack's just freshly done that, so it's all fresh in his mind. So he's the best person to ask rather than someone who's been screenwriting for a decade and forgot how he got there in the first place. And trust me, after so long in this industry, you do tend to forget simpler things because the real world doesn't exist apart from the project you're on. So yeah, I'll let Jack introduce himself.
I'm Jack, and yeah, I was started writing when I was like 16, but it was more of like no one else wanted to do it in my class, so I was the only one. Yeah, I was like, oh, I find this fun, I'll do it, and I kind of was on and off of it. I graduated, I was in college, so I was 18, and then I kind of did some bar jobs. I didn't go to university, and then I thought, oh, why not pick it back up? And I wrote a play. That play got read by established screenwriter called Michael Leslie, and he said, oh, let's meet. I met him, I met some of his business partners, and they got me my first job as a runner. And I was a runner for a long time, for about 3 years. I think the first job I worked on was a film called Lockdown, which was really fun. And then from there, I kind of just like worked for the industry, worked on my writing, and then what really struggled was being a set PA, just because the work was coming in, but not enough to like afford an apartment in London. So I thought, well, I'll go and work in an agency, like a talent agency, and I worked in talent agencies for about 2 years. Still writing, but not as much as I should have been. And then last year, so I probably had like a 6-month-year hiatus from writing. I touched it a little bit here and there, but not enough to be doing it. And then last year I thought, oh, do you know what? I really love writing. I was at a low point, and I was like, do you know what? I'm not happy. I wasn't happy doing anything I was doing. I was like, do you know what? I really want to do is I want to just write, even if it's just for myself. I want to write. So I picked up an old script, started writing it. I reached out to another writer, reached out to me who sort of ended up mentoring me. His name was Niall Casson, and in that year, from that point till now, I've gotten a manager, I've gotten repped. I've got a feature film being made, a TV pilot that's in the works, and a couple of films, a horror film, a couple of shorts going on. So yeah, but that in the space of a year, I really didn't expect to go from just writing for myself to then being able to do it full time and being paid for it and getting representation. So that's kind of the sum of how I got there. And you guys have any questions, obviously ask. But that's an abridged version of how I got to writing professionally. Very good, Jay.
Right, so we've got some questions here which have came in from an email from email.
Gotta
find it again. Sorry, I was a bit unorganized today. I do apologize. So what does the writing route look like, and how do you stay disciplined?
What does the what look like, sorry?
The writing route.
The writing route.
Yeah.
So like, do you mean like how do I like as in like what my journey look like, or how do I keep working in that sort of vein?
I believe it's like how do you stay focused on writing?
Oh right. Well, how do I stay focused on it? It's more that like it's always in the back of my mind. It's like it's a bit of like an itch, really. I think that even when I wasn't writing, I always wanted to be, and it's always like I feel guilty when I'm not. So the way I stay disciplined is that, like, you always hear that rule, like you should be writing every day, you should be, you should be typing, doing 5 pages of a script every day. And I think that's like a really unfair rule if you're working on spec scripts and stuff, because, and also if you're working a normal job, because you might not have that time, you might be tired. And also, what happens if you're doing an outline or doing a treatment and you're not typing 5 pages? You have to be writing 3 scripts on the go at a time, which is just not, it's not what I do. Yeah, I'll have multiple gigs going on at a time, but a lot of the process is sometimes allowing yourself the time to breathe and think about a project. What happens with me is I think up a concept, and then I let it brew and like lay asleep at night and think about it, and allow it to marinate, and the ideas will come then. And then I'll move into like a log line, like the concept of it. What do I want this to be about? Like roughly get a log line down. Then I'll go into like a treatment. So I'll just get everything down on the page, everything's in my head, make sure that it's all there. I generally try to adhere to some level of structure. So if it's 3 acts or 4 acts or 5 acts is more, TV, and 6 acts is TV. But I would say if you're starting off, 3 acts and 4 acts are always really nice. And feature films, if you go to a TV pilot, that's a whole different kettle of fish that we can talk about, because that requires a lot more funding and establishment to get TV made. It's a lot more expensive, and networks or streamers need to pick it up, but I can go into that later. But the way I stay focused is I feel guilty if I'm not writing. I feel like I should be doing this. I should, if I'm not, then I can't. If I'm not writing, I can't achieve what I want to do as a career. And when you're a writer, you're your own boss in a sense, right? So you need to make sure that you're staying. So I'm just going to put you need to make sure that you are working on something at a time. Even if you're not writing 5 pages, you should be doing a treatment, you should be moving into your outline. And then when you get to the script, you can actually, then you're writing, but it's all part of the process. I don't think you should feel guilty or anything like that because you're not writing interior, police station day or anything like that.
Brilliant. So how did you build confidence in your voice and ideas as a new screenwriter?
Yeah, voice is a hard one, and like that, I remember getting that. One of the first guys who got me into the industry was like, the biggest thing you need to learn is your voice. I was like, what does that even mean, finding your voice, right? Like, that's such a sort of large concept to deal with. How do I sound unique when you're reading Kaufman, Town, Sorkin, all these screenwriters, you pull from that. Scott Silver was a really big inspiration on me. So how do I find kind of the uniqueness in my writing? And honestly, I think it comes from doing it so much. We've got a question. Oh, perfect. I will. What's the best way for a new writer to build industry connections without an agent? Okay, so I'll start afterwards. Is that it's confidence, it's doing it again and again and again, and thinking, and honestly, it comes from getting reads. So like if one of my first screenplays I wrote, that was very like, it was I like the story, but it was very stale in terms of the dialogue was conversational, but it didn't have the kind of lyricism to it that I like with my writing now. But that come from me not being scared to put myself on the page. And so what I would say is be confident and let loose just a little bit. Don't worry if interesting dialogue is good. If it sounds a little bit loose or unhinged, or if we use Succession or Sorkin, for example, but that dialogue is wordier, but it's renowned because it is wordier and because it is a bit more unhinged, and that's because the writer has confidence in himself. So if you want to find confidence, I would just say keep writing, get reads, and you have to learn. Like if someone gives you a note and they're like, oh, this is too expositional, or this, eventually people will be like, oh, I really like this. And that's where your confidence comes. Well, for me, at least, that's where my confidence came from, was getting notes and people being like, oh, this is actually quite good, but could you change this? And then you start to, the more you do it, the more confidence you get. You have to write a lot of scripts. Things have to get made. You have to make mistakes. I remember being frozen and not writing at all because I didn't want to make a mistake. But now I'm like, if I make a mistake, I can learn from it. Or if someone doesn't like something, I can change it, because that's a great thing about scripts. They're changeable, So yeah, just keep doing it and your voice will come, and everyone's voice is different. There's no best voice. But I just see 2 other questions. What's the best way for new writers to build industry connections without an agent? So if you're so hypothetically, if you're starting off in like a a normal job and you haven't got any industry connections, I would say that look into film festivals. Always great. That if you're starting off and you're wanting to write, go and have a chat with some people. Just don't like set, oh, I love, watch their stuff. Say I love what you made, and just don't try and sell yourself straight away. Just make friends with people first. I think that's the most important thing. That being a cool hang, being a nice person, and being friends with people will get you really. It's got me. Like I'm where I am because I get on with people and I like to make friends and work with people that I like, and which might not always be the case when you go to the studio stuff, but but when you're on the lower end or the independent end, there's some really lovely people you can work with. So if you're looking without any connection for an agent, agents come so much later in the process. I remember asking my mentor, should I start emailing agents? He was like, don't even bother, because that comes very organically and naturally. I used to work in agencies, and if we got an email that was from someone who hadn't made something that wasn't on national TV or wasn't on Netflix, it gets put in the bin. Like it needs, and especially right now in the state of the industry and the economy that we're in, it's even harder to get repped. I didn't expect to get repped this year at all. That was a real curveball. But he's for context, he's my manager. So not an agent. A manager is someone who looks after you more personally. And in the UK, they did the same thing. But in America, there's an agent and a manager, and they're two separate entities. But what I would say, if you're looking to connect with more people, Film Insider community is really good. That's a great one you should join. That's got a bunch of really lovely people. And I've gotten work from the Film Insider community, and like proper paid gigs. And I've got a movie being shot in February with an established director who was in that chat, and I wrote a script for them. Like last 3 months, I wrote a script for them, and that's going to be shot in 2026. So, but go to film festivals. Look on Facebook. I remember looking on Facebook at the start, and that's how I met my current mentor, not Michael Niall. Just through that, he said, "I'll read some scripts for you. I'll do a script. I'll do like a script edit for you." And I was like, "Great!" It's like $150 or something. And then we got to chatting, and then here we are. So it really is just kind of putting an olive branch out there and looking around and taking chances and really not being scared to fall, because I think that's what really holds a lot of people back, is being like, oh, what if I fail? It's like, well, wouldn't you have rather tried and failed than not tried at all? So I think really just go, if there's connections and there's people there and you can make friends with people and they know your name, and that's the big thing. If they know your name and they know you're a talented writer and they want to read one of your scripts, that's enough. And just stay in contact. I have a list of people I know, and I always just catch up with them. Even if we're not working together, just have a little chat with them or go for a coffee or dinner or something like that. So that's how I would say, just spread yourself as much as you can in terms of networking. There's no person you shouldn't get to know, and how would I describe my writing voice? That's a great question. I don't even know. How would I describe it? I suppose for me, action, when you're starting off, you can't rely on $200 million VFX budgets like for Superman, right? Where it's really entertaining for the eyes and buildings are being blown up and stuff like that. You've got to make it as entertaining as it can be for the budget that your film's going to have. So that could be low budget, could be like, well, if we're going really low, it could be in the tens to hundreds of thousands, or typically I write around the 3 to 5 million mark. And the way I would say my voice is, it's very, the action is different to the dialogue. So the action's very punchy. I use a lot of like quick, I don't need it. It's not a book. So you just, what do we see? If there's detail needed in there, then sure. But just give us a quick, I get in and out of action really quickly. I don't waste my time with it because it's super visual, right? Does she run? Does she sprint? Just get to the point. I try not to say, so Jack walks towards the car, reaches out his arm and opens the door and sits inside. I would just say Jack gets in the car, because it's, unless something happens on the way there or something's going to happen when they open the door, that's different. That's building suspense. We can talk about that later, but it mainly is just get to the point. And if we're building suspense, then we can approach that in a different way. But generally speaking, nice and lean in the action. And then the dialogue, my dialogue's very lyrical and very witty. I like my characters to be, unless they're not meant to be, the most intelligent people in the room. I love a battle of wit and intelligence, and something that is just as entertaining for the ears as an action scene would be for the eyes. So like that, I guess. It's really hard to describe, but there's a tone you can get across, and it's also how I speak. You know, it's very much I write how it's coming out. Thank you, Amy. That's very nice. But yes, but that's how I describe my style.
You know, I'm like quite overwhelmed by it all. I'm not a screenwriter myself. I normally get scripts and I have to break it down to do my job, so location breakdowns and everything else. So, got other questions. So I've been doing elsewhere. What would you say to someone who's working on a junior role on set but wants to write?
Okay, yeah, I remember when I was in it. So I was a PM. What would I say to someone who's know what you want to do, right? If you want to be a writer, working on set for me was great because I learned kind of ground level how everything's made, logistics, the roles, so like, and how a script should be written. Obviously style comes into it and writers write differently, but you know, I'd never, unless it was important to the story, I'd never say what a character was wearing, because if that's costume's job, right? And I don't put camera directions in there because that's not my job. I might put a cut to black maybe if I'm feeling confident, but what I learned most from working on there was knowing that my job is to write the story. I don't need to get into like the superfluous details unless it's important to the story. So if I was writing a Spider-Man film, for example, and Peter suits up, I would say Peter gets in his suit. I wouldn't say you know, the color of the suit, because we all assume the Spider-Man suit's red and blue or whatever. And if I said, I say it's a spy film, I'd say, you know, Jack and Jay clad in black wait on a rooftop. That's enough, right? And then move on, because it's such a small detail. So yeah, and what I would say is it's great to work on set, keep doing that, but also network with producers, make contacts, get the emails, because when you write a script and you want to get reads and you want to pitch it and push it, those are the people you're going to be pitching to. If they're like Disney producers, probably the wrong people you're pitching to. But if it's like BBC and stuff like that, you can absolutely, and also if you build a good relationship with these people, you can reach out and talk to them and say, look, I've got this film, and they might not make it, but they might know someone who might make it. And that's kind of how it works. It's about a lot of stuff I've done is someone knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who wants to make a script. So that's how why the networking is important, and that's why it's important to make friends, because it's kind of this chain of friendship that everyone wants to help each other out, and you know, you do favors for them and they do favors for you. The amount of scripts I've read, done free reads for and stuff is, you know, but I love it. So it's not like a job, but I would say just know what you're doing, like why you're on set. But if you want to be a writer, being on set it's going to help. And you could meet someone who could get you into they might not give you a writing job, but it could be, they might know someone who could put you you could be a writer's assistant or a writer's room assistant, and then you meet the writers there. But just keep writing and push your scripts, right, and pitch to producers, and query emailing is a big thing as well. That really helped me at the start. So yeah, if that's helpful, ask me another question. If that doesn't make sense, let me know. Just pop it in the chat and I'll answer it.
Any other questions in the chat before I find my next question in my bunch of emails I have? Now, this is a big one. I get asked this a lot, personally. But working professionally, how do you handle imposter syndrome or self-doubt?
God, that's a hard one. Yeah. I still get it. You know, I still get it. I think what it is that, yeah, when you're, it used to stop me writing at the start, because I was like, who am I to be writing screenplays? You know, I would idolize all of these amazing screenplays I was reading and the writers who were doing them. So what kind of got me out of it was realizing that I'm just as worthy as being there as anyone else, just because they might come from a different background or they've gone for the NFTFs doesn't mean they're any less worthy than what you're writing. I think being a writer, we all have something to say, and I think that there's no scale to it, you know. And I think that you've just got to remember that you're allowed to be here. You're allowed, this is not a pipe dream. This is something that's achievable. Writing is achievable. You just have to make sure that you're writing the right things so that you can do it professionally, like making sure you're writing screenplays that can be made at this time and are not too low concept right now, because you could go write your low concept in 10 years when you're established, but right now you need to be as tasty as a screenwriter as possible, because people want to, they're going to put money on you. You need to be as being able to do as qualified to do the job as possible. But the imposter syndrome, I don't even, that's a really hard question. I guess just, even if you feel it, don't let it stop you. I get it. I still get it. And I'm like, do you know what? I just put my best foot, I get up, put my best foot forward. And I'm like, no matter how I feel, I get on and do the pages, even if I feel imposter syndrome. It's part of the process. Honestly, it never goes away for me, especially since I've been doing it. It's just a part of the ebb and flow of your relationship with writing, and accepting that and nurturing that emotion will push you through it, and it won't stop you, but it is very natural to feel that. So just allow yourself to feel that emotion, carry on writing, and it will go, because you're like, actually, I wrote a really good page today. I do deserve to be here. And there are days where you write maybe a crappier page and you're like, why am I doing this? But despite that, you get up the next day and you do more pages. And that's kind of it. It's just the resilience and the grit to keep going, even if things feel weird or that you shouldn't be here.
It's definitely one way to look at it. Even 10 years in this industry, I still get that doubt of thinking, what am I doing in my life? It never goes away. It's one of those things that just go into the back of your mind and you just forget about it.
Oh, yeah. It's just when you get to a point, you'll just forget, right? Because you've got too much stuff to be doing and not worrying about that, But I know at the start, but even when I was working on set as a runner, I was like, I don't deserve to be here, like what? Like, this is crazy. I remember was meeting Anne Hathaway and I was like, am I having like a fever dream or something like that? This is so weird. But you get used to it, it's just part of the process.
It is, and I don't know if you had discussions between, like, after you've been finished work and you all go back to the hotel to have after drinks, just to like calm down of what the hectic of the day was.
Yeah.
We had conversations about celebrities and the expectations. I remember having a full-blown like night of talking about what celebrities smell like, and if they met our expectations, which was weird.
Yeah, no, it's
just weird conversations you have.
Yeah, 100%.
This is one for me. This is my question I'm always quite interested about. Obviously, as a screenwriter, you write your own ideas. But when someone comes to you with their idea, how do you get their idea on page?
Okay. So like I'll literally go through the process of it. So say hypothetically, someone came to me. I can use an example of recently. A director sent me a pitch deck for the film, right? They just had the characters, the log line, and that didn't give much structurally for me, and the like cast details and who the director was and who the producer was, and that was it. And I had a chat with I first of all sat down with the director and I said, okay, what movies inspired you here, first of all, so I can get an idea and I can go do my research, which is the first part of my process. Is if I'm working for someone, what films can I draw from, tonally at least, to kind of help me get some beats in there and some scenes and some sequences that can help make it feel like the genre of film that it is. So I'll do that. I'll chat with them and I'll say, okay, let me go away here and I need to do the start of my process. So I've already got the log line because they've provided it. So that's all done. So I first go into a treatment and then I'll look at, okay, how do I want to structure this? What would be cool? What would be entertaining? What's scary? What surprises the audience? And so say hypothetically on this film I just finished, I decided to go with a 4-act. So at the midpoint, the second half of the film majorly contrasts the first half of the film in terms of stakes and the through line, right? Everything changes and there's a new perspective added for the audience. So you learn in this script at the midpoint, the best friend who's been working with the entire time has actually been the antagonist in this entire film, right? It's like, let's set this all up. And I said that I basically put it all down on a document. I labeled each beat, right? So, you know, status quo, inciting incident, plot point one. Then I went to you've got the pinch point one, midpoint, reversal, pinch point two, loss of hope, plot point two, climax, the climactic moment which comes after the climax, and then your resolution. And I write exactly every single scene in that. I also then tie into it character development, character arcs, so how these characters interact and how they're changing throughout the film. And then by the end, what you mean at the end, it was a 10-page document on Word. That was still just the body of the script. You know, it was not the full thing. It was just kind of roughly what I was thinking of. I sent it to the director. She loved it. She gave a couple notes. I said, great. Well, I had a 3-month deadline, so I said, okay, well, I'll make these notes and I'll go into my outline. So what I do a beat board and I break them down per act to make sure that all of my beats are in there, and then I can review it and also see if anything's missing. And that's when I cracked on with it. Did the script in I think about a month. I think like the first draft, not the vomit draft. I got the vomit draft done in about 3 weeks. It was 88 pages, which is a bit short, and then went back, sent that to the director, and we just kind of went back and forth, and the script went up to it's like 100 pages now. So when you're working with someone compared to spec, you have to remember, A, they're paying you. So yes, you can have your creative input, but if they're paying the bills, if they really want something in there, you go, yep, cool, I get that. And making sure, like, when they say, oh, I want it to be a bit like this film and this film, go and watch those films, because there are scenes in there that you can not copy, but you can mold into your story. And there's genre tropes, and if you're doing genre films, which I do generally sit with high concept genre films as my kind of my niche, especially thrillers. I know this sort of the part of the film that make it feel like a horror or a thriller or an action or a romance. So yeah, but just making sure that if you're working for someone, you want to provide the best quality script of what they want, because after they do that, they'll refer you to someone else, and that's how you keep recurring work coming up, is by doing a really, really good job and letting go of the script. I know it's really hard because your scripts are your babies and you spend so much time in them, but really not being attached to a script. And if someone, you know, I remember that, you know, there's sometimes if someone gives a note and you're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, great, that's a great idea, why don't I think of that? Oh my god. And then you just do it anyway, because as a writer in films, the director is the top dog and the writers below it. The director will tell you that their opinion's final, basically, in terms of what happens in the script. In TV, it's the other way around. The writers first, and they're in charge, and then the directors come second. So yeah, I think that answers the question, I think. I
hope. One last question from my list of questions.
Mm.
One I get a lot as well. If you had to restart your whole entire career without more connections, what would your first move be?
That's a really good question. I just think about this a lot, to be honest with you. What would I do? So, like, say I just came out of college, I would have gone to university and done some form of like literature or film or something like that. I think with writers, that if you want to be a very pedigree writer, English literature is the best way to go, because you'll go study the classics. And then I would have gone and probably done a postgrad and then a master's in screenwriting. Not that you need to do this, but if I think it would have made my life a little bit easier, and tried to get into the NFTS. I probably would have been more involved in my theatre scene and stuff like that, because, you know, I was really heavily involved in that as in high school and college. But when I came out of it, I just completely, you know, I was just working in bars, and then I got my job on set. I probably, once I finished all that, I would have gone, hopefully gone to the NFTS. You come at the NFTS, you're basically ready to go. The NFTS is a really hard school to get into and excessively expensive. So that would have been the dream journey. And then obviously from that you go into writing, you know, staff writing and stuff like that, and doing plays. But I think I don't regret the way I came into the industry, because I think that working on set gave me like a bit of an edge to understand, like to know obviously reading a lot of scripts. I interned for production companies. It gave me like a really ground level understanding of the industry and the work and the people that goes into it, and like understand, like knowing the industry and how it works is so beneficial, because you don't feel as bad when something doesn't go your way, because you know how these things play out. That's like the way, kind of the organics and the biology of the industry is something that I'm really glad I did learn. But if I could completely control, I would have gone the very pedigree, established, acclaimed writer route, because things are a lot easier like that. But there's very few people get that opportunity, and it doesn't always last either. But I think what's really most beautiful is that everyone has a different experience. The way I got into it, the way you might get into it, or your friend might get into it, it's always different, and no writer has the same way in. Larry Cohen, who wrote Phone Booth, he was writing at 23 or something like that in Hollywood, writing Western TV shows. He worked for 30 years and he ended up writing Phone Booth and Cellular and stuff like that. And he was an amazing screenwriter. Whereas if you look at Sorkin, he did a few Good Men as a play. I think it was in his late 20s, and that got picked up. So there's so many ways into it. It's not like one way. I think that's one thing to remember, that there's not like, it's not like you're in a normal job where you go from like staff to manager to that. There's so many. You can work in a writer's room as an assistant, or you could be an editor, and you can end up writing. It's quite flexible.
And so when you get writer's assistants, where would be the best place to find these type of work? Obviously, there's a lot of different niche websites and niche groups. I know that if you do join back to, you get into your department's branch. A lot of work gets into that. Or myself being a back to member in the location branch, there's a lot of location work going on in there. Is there any other places where people can become writers assistants or continuity people?
Yeah. So the way I would do it is, I was part of an agency for a really long time called Call Time, and Call Time put out runners jobs. They also put out occasionally sort of like writers assistants jobs, or like writers room assistants jobs. So that might be a place. Interning is a really big one. So I worked at 11 Film Production for like a month, I think it was, and I got to be in the room with writers and stuff, and being able to, you're getting teas and coffees and you're making notes and stuff like that. But that, trying to get internships is really, really, is a really good way in. And 11 Film, I'm pretty sure they do like a monthly internship for different people. I think it's monthly or something like that. They always have something new coming to them. So really great for helping people get into the industry if they want to work in development. So I would say look there, reach out to, like, I've spoken about IMDb Pro before. I don't know if I was speaking about it here, but IMDb Pro, it's like normal IMDb. You have to pay, I think it's like £12 a month for it. But if you get it, and you can look on certain producers' IMDb pages, they have their emails on there, so you can literally email them if you want, have your materials, and be like, hey, I'm a young filmmaker. I love screenwriting. I'm looking for an opportunity. They might never get back to you, but they also might. You could email 200 and get one response being like, hey, I might know someone who can help. So that's one way. Another way is networking. So going to networking events, getting to know, and remember the people you want to meet. And if you want to write a writer's assistant job, it's you really need to know screenwriting first. Like, I've had editors before who didn't know structure, and then I'm telling my editor how to do structure. So you really need to know the craft of it, because that will put you way above people who, I remember sitting down in the writer's room as an assistant, and there was a script they were making, and I said, well, the inciting incident isn't till page 54 out of an hour episode. I said that should be at page 10, and everything else should be a problem of the week episode. Like, how do we, that you need, we can establish these characters and whatnot, but we need to have a problem. And I loved that because I understood structure. So it's learning the craft. I can recommend some books if anyone's interested, because I had my mentors, but my mentors weren't talking to me weekly, especially Michael. Michael spoke to me, a handful, a good amount of times over a couple of years, but not every. He's a working screenwriter and he's really busy. So I read a lot of books, wrote, watched master classes, just did everything to really, I should have gone university really for it, but I just kind of took in as much as I could and just was a sponge to knowledge, and then practiced it and went and did it. So I think that if you know your craft and you go into a room and you impress people, they're going to be like, I want this person to come to the room next, because they know their stuff. They know how to correct dialogue. They know how character arcs are meant to work. They know the structure of structuring a character arc throughout a TV show or a film, when an inciting incident should be, when, everything like that. Just being able to recite structure off by heart, knowing all the structures, like the difference between a 7-act structure and a 3-act structure, or a 5-act or a 4-act, and where you would use each structure, really just puts you above the barrel of people. And producers love that. They love hardworking people who are dedicated to the craft, because they also know that they put that effort in.
Well, yeah, so let's open up the floor to anyone. Anyone want to discuss their own scripts, want clarification or anything else? Just feel free to bombard the chat or raise your hand and talk on camera. Alice?
Oh, hi.
Hiya.
I was just wondering, so with networking, when you go to networking events, because like I haven't done anything professionally screenwriting, I'm never sure how to introduce myself, because at the moment I've just been saying production assistant because that's where I am. But is there a way of introducing myself as like, oh, I do writing, I just don't have that on my, like, I don't have the official professional experience, I guess, yet.
No, I hear you. I know that feeling so well. Like you feel like you're lying to them, and you're like, yeah. I literally, I remember, like that was a weird thing for me, because I come from being an agent's assistant to doing screenwriting. It's like, when do I change this in my LinkedIn bio? So what I would say is, right, if you want to be a writer, you need, like, frankly, that's what the hard part, right? Is like, when do I publicly say it's time, I'm doing this now, right? I would say, if you're writing right now and you want to be a writer, do it right now. Don't be, it's scary, because you're like, that's that imposter syndrome. You're like, am I ready? Am I, I'm not the finished product by any means, right? But I'm always learning, and my style is ever changing as well. So you're always, like, this is not like you're the set product and that's it, you're finished. You're going to be changing for the entirety of your writing journey, and changing as a writer, and your views and your dialogue, everything's going to be changing. So don't worry about being the set product. Just change it now, and say, when you go to a networking event, if you're looking to further your career as a writer, introduce yourself as a writer. Don't even say anything about the production assistant job. Just be like, if anyone's like, oh, like, what are you working on? You say, oh, I'm working on a couple of scripts at the moment. If they say, oh, what have you on set? Be like, oh yeah, but I do that on the side to help pay the bills, which everyone has had a survival job at some point. I have. I'm all right, I haven't got one right now, but if the industry doesn't sort itself out, I might, have to find something. But don't feel like you need to have earned a certain amount or done a certain amount. If you're a writer, you're a writer. That's it.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's all right. Also, we didn't speak about high concept, Jay. I wanted to chat about that.
Well, no, we didn't. No, high concept scripts.
Yeah, like what you should be writing, because I think that's so important for new writers to be. I just realized we didn't talk about it at all. Yeah, also just another thing I wanted to bring up for you guys, depending on what you're writing, high concept is going to be so important for you guys. Like, I've read a lot of like low concept films, and high concept, if you guys don't know what it means, high concept just means like a simple premise, it's understandable. I think Saw or Phone Booth or Buried or something like that, those are thrillers. But if you're in, the elevator pitch where you've got 25 words and you've got to be like that, it's got to be really quick and accessible for like a producer, for example. I remember I was over in LA, and I had a meeting on the Warner Brothers lot, and I got on into the elevator with the producer, who I will not name. He's a very lovely dude, but I won't say him because he's a lovely guy. But I went up there and I said, "Oh," he said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a writer." He said, "Oh, I'm a producer." He said, "What are you writing at the moment?" And I was writing a film that was it's a bit like, oh, I'll just say it, but it's like Saw meets, I don't know, Pi, right? The math film where this guy's stuck in a room and he's got to use math to get out. And he was like, "I love that. That sounds so cool." Like, so it's a bit, and we got chatting about it, and then the elevator doors opened, I got out and he went up, and I took his email whilst I was in there and said I'll chat to him later. Just being easy and breezy, but writing something that's so easy to sell, because that has a large demographic, therefore producers going to make more money. If you're writing something low concept that less people are going to go see, or it has a smaller audience, that's not going to be as tasty for a producer who think he could make more money on something that, you know, I always use Joe the plumber or Max the electrician analogy. Like, a guy who goes to the cinema on the weekend wants to go watch this movie with his girlfriend just to relax and have a good time. Those are the movies that get made first, from smaller writers, because more people like them. So I think that if you're writing something high concept is so important. But that's basically got me where I am now, writing high concept thrillers that are cheaper to make. You know, if they're contained, they have very few locations and there's no VFX or anything like that, or very little. That is like really, really helpful to help it move that needle just a little bit more. So yeah.
Does anyone else want to discuss anything? Anything? Like 16 people here out of 53 who registered to attend. I'm sure a lot of you have burning questions. So Amy has put, writing beats for short, how do you map out the beats?
In a short, oh god, yeah, short structure and shorts are hard. What how many pages are you going for? 5 pages. Okay, that's a tough one. Have you got a log line or anything you can send me? Kind of a little, or like just conceptually kind of what it's like, don't have to spoil anything, but I'd like to have a look at it. What were some of the books you recommend for getting someone in screenwriting? Yeah, I can tell you. And let me know if you miss any. I'll wait, Amy, I'll wait for the log line on you. So first book I read, which terrified me on screenwriting, was Sid Field's screenplay. It was the first ever book I read of it. I can, if you want to put this in the chat, I can. I'm also, I'll put my email in the chat if you guys want to just send me any questions afterwards, or you want to talk privately, we can do that. I'm happy to talk with anyone who needs any help. Appreciate all you guys coming as well. It's very, very kind. Sid Field screenplay, it's the first one. 100 Reasons Your Screenplay Sucks by William M. Ackers, I think is the guy who wrote that. John York, Into the Woods. That's a really good one. What's another one here? I've got one here, The Screenwriter's Bible. I've literally got up here. That's a fantastic book. Save the Cat. I never read Save the Cat, I'll be honest with you, but I know the rule of what Save the Cat is, but I never read it. But apparently that's a really good book as well. But the ones I read were Sid Field's screenplay. Yeah, 100 Reasons Your Screenplay Sucks. John York's Into the Wood and The Screenwriter's Bible. And that was enough for me. And then actually doing it, because if you sit there reading all day, it's really boring because you want to be writing. So those are what I would recommend starting with. But, you know, don't get too held up on, it's not like law, you know, there's rules to it. Obviously, you know, it's a visual medium, it's a performative piece of literature, but get writing, you know, and read it alongside it, have fun, you know, like especially at the start. Don't feel that's, I think that's what slowed me down, is that I read Sid Field's screenplay and I was like, oh my god, the imposter syndrome set in, is such a massive task, I'm never going to be able to do this, blah 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 blah. And then it's just doing it that ended that let me, gave me the confidence to understand and really practicing structure. So that's where I would say to start. Yeah, those are good books. But you could read screenplay books forever. I'd read a few and then get to work, because otherwise you'll be spending all your time reading instead of writing. So yeah. Amy, did you manage to find that log line?
whilst Amy looks for her log line, I'll make sure I get all of the book recommendations of Jack to send out on a mass email, so everyone gets them as well, along with the links that are shared to the Film Insider community, which is £10 a month, and the Cold Time Foundation, which is run by Vicky and Tamara, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they're sweethearts. They're lovely and very, very helpful.
Vicky's a fellow Geordie, so yeah. We all know each other in the industry.
Here we go. Amy said, a psychological horror similar to the yellow wallpaper where the protagonist posts a comment on a Facebook story and they become the thing they detest the most. Okay, that's interesting. So right there, straight away. So a logline should really, I understand. So they post something on the Instagram story and it's very vague. And with a logline, you need to at least give some sense of narrative. And they're like, I understand, but like detest the most, it's super vague. You need to give us some more idea of like what's going to happen here. Because if I were looking at that online, I was like, what? Like that's so vague. I don't even know what I'm in for. It really needs to be a little bit more focused. And the best analogy I can use is I use the microscope analogy. Is right now that's pretty far out. Let's just dial it in a bit closer. Let's give us a bit more about, you know, we were saying it's a psychological horror. How is it a psychological horror, right? Is it that they don't know what's real? So we need a bit more detail and like what don't they know about what's going on? Because I would never say in my logline it's a contained thriller, a high concept contained thriller. I would just say Jack wakes in a room handcuffed to a radiator. Across from him is another man who's doesn't know why he's there, or like whatever the log, that's Saw basically. But you saying in your logline doesn't make it a psychological horror. It's what the logline makes that psychological horror. The story is about government taking away hormones from trans people and the deaths it occurs. He comments that this is a great way to get rid of them, and then they all get possessed by that. The voices at them. Okay, that's pretty dark, but I like it. How would I structure a 5-minute short from that? Well, it is 5 minutes, right? I think you said it was pretty sure it was 5 minutes, but 5 minutes isn't a lot. 5 minutes is a very short. So typically with a short, I would range from 12 to 15 minutes if you want to enter in competitions, right? 5 minutes, they are. How would I structure it? Well, structure in shorts is different, first of all, because you haven't got 90 to 100 pages to break this up. You can try and implement structure, and bear in mind, all structure is just the order in which you place scenes. That's all it is. There's no math to it. It's just this scene goes after this scene because of this, right? I've literally done it before. I've moved an entire scene after something or before something because it serves the story better to learn this later on, or we learn it sooner. So what for 5 pages, I would say you've got one. So your first page should be your status quo. So who is our protagonist? What is their animal potion? Thinking anema potion in page 3. I'm just thinking about that. Page 3. So your anema potion is your inciting incident. That's when your character goes into their unfamiliar world, right? So I would say, yeah, maybe if you can squeeze it on page 2, I would put it on page 2 if I were you. If you can't, top of page 3, but I would say the sooner, basically in short, the sooner the story gets started, the better. Like your act 1 in a short, which is ridiculous because it's so short. But if you want to break up in the conceptualities of what a feature or a TV show would be, is that you want the act 1 to be short, where you establish who this character is, show them being the person that they. Sure thing, I can do it as a previous Facebook post before the government story. Yeah, you need to establish both things though. So like the Facebook post, the government story needs to be put in act 1, and you need to establish your protagonist in the act 1, who they are. Are they learning by the end of their story that like this 5-minute short, that what they've done is wrong? That's the first thing. So it's such a little amount of time. Like these are more like these shorts. The 5-minute shorts are a lot of them, what I've seen, are very artsy. And they're very kind of nuanced and low concept, which is great for them because, you know, I remember watching one where it was just a guy and he plays the drums the entire time whilst the microwave is going off. I can't remember the name of that, but that was a really good shot. I'll try and find that and send it to Joe afterwards. But doing something narrative in 5 minutes is really 15. You've got like I've recently just started doing a 15-minute short for a producer, a hired gig for a producer, and that's super hard as well. 15 minutes. I hate it. It's so difficult to put everything you want into 15 pages. So I would say, yeah, status quo, first page, second page, and starting incident with a potion. So then you've got 3 pages to do your act 2, so them dealing with whatever they're dealing with and struggling, and then maybe 4 pages, and your 5th page needs to be your resolution, how does the movie end. So that's how I would structure it, if you can. That's a really tough job. Like I think there's like I speak to a lot of new writers, and they always say, oh, you know, I like shorts because it's not as much, I don't have to put as much time into it. I'm like, you know, they're easier, they're shorter to write, and they'll get out them. Like, arguably they're probably a lot harder because you need to squeeze in all of the stuff you need to put in a story in a really tiny cup. You know, basically it's I find them a lot harder to do because I'm a narrative writer, and sometimes they're more conceptual, or they're super simple, and like not even just like high concept simple. They're really diluted down to the bones of a concept, right? Act 1 turns to Act 2 when anema possession occurs, and the final scene is Act 1 wearing the dress Act 2 was wearing and Phil from behind looking into the mirror. Okay. Cool, yeah. I mean, if that's the way it ends, then amazing. Just be careful that you're not putting camera directions in your script, because that isn't your job as a writer. I remember my friend wrote a script, and it was a pretty like a well-established director picked it up, and my friend used camera angles in the script, you know, close on, pan over, stuff like that, match cut, and the director was like, why are you telling me how to do my job, you know? And then he said, like, the editor's going to pick this up and just be like, I'm not going to do this, you know. That's down to them on the day and what the cinematographer wants to do as well. So just say, like, she looks into the mirror, you know. We don't need to say we look from behind. That's the cinema, that's for the shooting day, you know. You just say, if someone's, yeah, you wouldn't say like a side, you know, okay, fab, yeah, great, cool. But yeah.
Going off what Jack said about camera directions, on the day of a shoot, on like this most typically in high-end TV and features, you get something called a side, which is just basically an A5 piece of paper, and it's the shooting script. So everything what's going on is on there. The screenwriter never really does that. It's always recommended for each department of what's going on, and they never stick to it, especially in call sheets. Oh, yeah, we're going to do this. For example, Jack walks out the door, grabs his coat, goes back in. The director might get a new idea and just push it off on something else. Example of this, most recent one, is the new movie that's coming out by Studio Cornell, which I worked on, called I Swear by Kirk Jones. The whole day we had permission and everything for this church, and he just turned around and went, Gorilla says, listen, I don't want to do this church just at a minute. I want to go down that path by these houses. So things do change on the day.
Yeah.
We're there just to essentially get the baseline of the story correct.
Yeah, and the narrative, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another thing is that I see a lot is, you know, I read a lot of screenplays that were online when I was starting off. I read Chinatown, and I read Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and I read Joker, which is again by Scott Silver, who I really love. Loads and loads of screenplays, and the ones that are in the social network, but the ones that are online, those are shooting scripts. Those aren't writers' scripts. So there's a difference. There's different variations, right? So, for example, if I wrote something on spec, and when I have written something on spec, I would never put camera angles in. I wouldn't put anything. I wouldn't put the scene numbers in. I've seen that before, where people put the scene numbers down the side of the page. That is just for a shooting script. So remember that there's a writer's script, there's a director's script, which when the director gets hands on the script, he might want to go in, and I've had it done before, where he just wants to put his camera angles in there. I also know directors that don't do that and just go straight into a storyboard and use the script to sort of cross-reference to the storyboard. but then there's a shooting script that production will get their hands on, and then that's a whole different process, not just writing the script, but then maybe things need to change. Maybe they can't afford certain scenes, so you have to rewrite the scenes to be smaller or something not happening. There's loads of different challenges that come. Like just because you finish the script and it's got an out, it's getting made, it might need more rewrites because the budget dictates if you can put a car chase in there, or if you know X, Y, and Z. Basically, you know, it's ever changing, and as Jay just said, on the day it can change as well. So you know, you never know. Might be a completely different scene sat in a restaurant where you said it in a car, you know, but it might be the same dialogue as well. But then again, actors can, you know, I've seen actors interpret dialogue and change it slightly. So that happens. That's falls back into what I was saying earlier about letting go of the script, loving the script when you have it, and then when you get it over to a director or producer, just wish it goodbye, and obviously you'll still be involved, but just not being so touchy and about it, and allowing, you know, it's a collaborative process, and you're working here to work with other people, so you have to respect the fact that there's going to be many opinions, and people who are paying the bills of everyone putting the budget up and getting your script made, their opinions are going to come in as well, which, you know, I think I've gotten some of my best notes from producers and directors who've given me perspective. I think that's why I love notes so much, is that I can see it from a different angle, and that informs the writing process. Again, I can go back and write a scene that's even better.
Does anyone else fancy falling the 2 pence? Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's been lovely. Appreciate it.
And everything discussed today will be going out in a mass email, as I said. It'll be coming from no.reply at newsletter.setstars.org.uk. We do have another webinar planned for Beck 2 if anyone will fancies learning more about what a union is and how unions work, especially working freelance. They also have an option for the Beck 2 also has the options for the members of script registration. So you can register your script with Beck 2. So it's got all that safety and that. Then you can find out more information on stepstars.org.uk/events. That's where we post all our events. And yeah, so
Thanks, guys. I just see the chat going. Thanks, Sam. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Lauren. I'm also, if you guys, I can, if you guys want to, I'm in the Film Insider group as well. If you guys want to talk to me in there, I lead the writers chat and that. So I'd love to see you guys and have a chat. And like, I'm always open to talk to new writers. Really, like, if you just message me, I talk with new writers all the time. It's really been a pleasure to speak to you guys. But it'd be nice to actually talk to you properly. And if you guys have any questions, I'm always here. To help if I can help.
yeah, you also host First Page Friday.
I do my First Page Friday, yeah. So if you guys join the Film Insider, you guys can put your first pages in, and I'll literally talk about, because the first pages are so important. But we can, if you guys join it, we can. Oh, is that your LinkedIn? So let me add that. Oh, cool. There we go. There you go, JJ. It's basically why first page is so important, and I read your first page and give you notes and stuff like that, and we can have a call and discuss it and everything like that. But I'm also, if you guys want to get in contact with me, I'm on social media. If you want to drop me a line, I'm on LinkedIn. It's like Sam, very intuitively put in the chat, and we can have a chat. I really want to champion any writer that I meet and make sure that, you know, they can make the steps that I did, so you can do it for a living, or at least start doing it for a living. And you know, if I can help in any way, that makes me extremely happy. Thank you, Christopher. Cool.